The great hall of the Galactic Concordat stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the chamber. Some floated in gravity fields. Others sat on platforms designed for their strange bodies. The air hummed with translation devices, turning alien speech into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Velquin stood at the speaker's platform. His forearms gestured as he spoke. His insect-like eyes reflected the lights from above. He was Thuvian, a species known across the galaxy for careful thinking and endless meetings. Today he had an announcement that made him uncomfortable. Humanity had been granted observer status in the Concordat. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species made clicking sounds. Others rumbled deep vibrations that shook the floor. A few of the representatives openly laughed. The sound was not kind. Velquin raised one of his arms for silence. It took several minutes before the noise died down. He continued speaking, though he did not believe his own words. Humans, he explained, came from a world called Earth. Ancient records mentioned them as survivors of a dangerous planet. The Council had decided to allow them into galactic society as observers. More laughter filled the chamber. A massive delegate from the Kronar Dominion stood up. He was 12 feet tall with gray skin like stone. His voice boomed without needing a translator. Humans are myths, the Kronar said. Old stories that became bigger with each telling. Look at them. No claws, no armor. No scales or shells. They have soft skin that tears easily. They are weak. They die from things that would not harm a child of any real species. Velquin wanted to argue, but he could not. He had seen humans. They looked exactly as the Kronar described. Small, fragile, unimpressive. Their technology was centuries behind galactic standards. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were primitive. Even their diplomats seemed confused by basic galactic customs. The ancient records must be wrong, Velquin thought. Or perhaps humans were different long ago. Evolution had made them weak. It happened to species sometimes when they found peace. A Koresh delegate floated forward. The Koresh were gray-skinned and thin, with large heads that held powerful brains. This one called herself Scholar Jihi. She had adopted a human name as part of her research. She was one of the few beings in the galaxy who studied humanity seriously. I have read the old records carefully, Jihi said. Her voice was soft but clear. They say humans evolved on a death world, a planet where everything tried to kill everything else, where the weather could change from burning heat to freezing cold in hours, where diseases and predators hunted constantly. The records say humans survived not through strength but through stubbornness. More laughter. The Kronar delegate shook his massive head. If their world was so dangerous, how did such weak creatures survive? No, these records are stories, myths, nothing more. The Council moved on to other business. Humanity was approved as observers with barely any debate. It was a small thing. A curiosity. No one thought humans would matter in galactic affairs. Then the news arrived from the frontier. New Haven was burning. The colony world sat on the edge of Concordat space. 30,000 people lived there. Humans, Thuvians, Koresh, and a dozen other species. They had built farms and cities together. They had families and homes. Now the Dravix horde had come. The Dravix were reptilian warriors who took what they wanted through force. They came from a hot world where only the strong survived. They believed might made right. They saw peaceful colonies as easy prey. The distress signals from New Haven were desperate. Their defense fleet had been destroyed in the first attack. Orbital stations burned. Dravix shock troops landed on the surface. They were taking the cities one by one. Civilians fled into the countryside, but there was nowhere safe to run. The Concordat Council met in emergency session. Velquin attended, listening as military commanders explained the situation. New Haven was too far away. A rescue fleet would take weeks to arrive. By then the colony would be ash. The Dravix would take everything of value and leave the rest burning. Some council members suggested negotiating. Perhaps the Dravix would accept payment to leave. Others argued that would only encourage more attacks. A few said nothing could be done. New Haven was lost. The cost of saving it was too high. Velquin felt sick. His people were Thuvian. 5,000 Thuvians lived on New Haven. His own brother had moved there with his family. They were among those running from the Dravix. And the council was going to abandon them. Then a new message arrived. It was from the human delegation. The message was short and formal. It said the Terran Defense Coalition had received New Haven's distress call. Human forces were already on their way. They would arrive in 2 days. The council chamber fell silent. Then someone laughed. Then another. Soon the whole chamber was filled with the sound of mocking laughter. Humans? Going to fight the Draviks? It was absurd. The Draviks were 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor. They were born warriors who trained for combat from childhood. Their weapons could melt steel. Their warships had crushed dozens of rebellions, and humans were going to stop them. The Kronar delegate stood again. This time he was not angry. He seemed almost sad. Those poor humans do not understand what they face. They will arrive, see the Draviks, and run away, or they will try to fight and be slaughtered in minutes. Either way, New Haven falls. Velquin wanted to believe the humans could help. He wanted to believe someone would save his brother and the other colonists. But when he looked at the tactical displays showing Dravik's forces, he felt only despair. The humans were bringing 5 frigates, 2 cruisers, and 1 carrier. It was not enough. It was not nearly enough. Scholar Ji-Hai approached Velquin after the meeting ended. She looked troubled. "I am going to New Haven," she said. "I have arranged transport on a fast courier ship." Velquin stared at her. "Why would you go there? It is a war zone." "You will die." "Because I need to see," Ji-Hai replied. "The old records say humans are warriors, but everyone thinks those records are myths. I want to know the truth. I want to see what humans do when they face real danger." Velquin made a sudden decision. "I am coming with you. My brother is on New Haven. My nieces. If the colony is going to fall, I want to be there. I want to try to save my family." They left within the hour. The courier ship was fast but small. It would take them 30 hours to reach New Haven. Velquin spent the time watching news feeds from the colony. Each hour brought worse reports. More cities captured. More casualties. The Draviks were being methodical. They wanted the colony intact so they could strip it of resources. Ji-Hai spent the journey reading old records on her data tablet. She showed some to Velquin, stories of human history, wars that lasted years, conflicts that killed millions, weapons that could destroy entire cities. Humans fought each other constantly, Ji-Hai said. For thousands of years they killed their own kind over land, resources, ideas, and pride. They became very good at warfare because they practiced it so much. Velquin felt even more worried. If humans spent so much time fighting each other, what did they know about protecting others? Would they even care about the colonists, or would they just want to fight the Draviks? The courier ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system. Immediately alarms started blaring. Dravik's warships were everywhere. The planet itself was visible on the screens, and parts of it glowed orange from fires burning on the surface. Then Velquin saw something else. Human ships. They had arrived exactly when they said they would. The Terran fleet floated in formation, and even from a distance, Velquin could see something different about them. These ships were not new and shiny like concordant vessels. They were scarred, damaged and repaired many times. They looked like ships that had seen real combat. The galaxy was about to learn that some myths were real, and some myths were actually warnings. Colonel Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of the TCS Indomitable and watched New Haven burn. He had seen burning cities before, too many times. Each one left a mark on his memory that never faded. This one would be no different, except this time he might be able to stop it before everyone died. He was 47 years old. His hair was starting to turn gray. His face had lines from years of stress and too little sleep. Scars crossed his hands and arms from battles he barely survived. He had fought in Earth's unification wars, where humans killed humans over land and resources. He knew what war looked like. He knew what it cost. "Status report," he said quietly. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Tae-Wan, pulled up the displays. The young man was 26, and this was his first real deployment. His hands shook slightly as he worked the controls, but his voice stayed steady. 30 Dravik's warships in orbit, sir. Another 20 smaller vessels. They have troops on the ground in 12 major cities. Estimated 40,000 Dravik soldiers planetside. Colonial defense forces are scattered and disorganized. Civilian casualties are already in the thousands. Dae-hyun nodded slowly. The numbers were bad, but not impossible. The Draviks had more ships and more soldiers. But humans had learned long ago that numbers were not everything. Strategy mattered. Determination mattered, and humans had both. "Prepare drop pods," he ordered. "All combat teams. We go in hard and fast. No preliminary bombardment. I want our people on the ground before the Draviks understand what is happening. Captain Hana entered the bridge at that moment. She was 32 and commanded the special operations teams. Her armor was already sealed, her helmet tucked under one arm. She had short dark hair and eyes that had seen too much violence. My teams are ready, sir, she said. Give us the worst spot and we will handle it. Daehyun allowed himself a small smile. Hana had lost her entire family in a colony raid when she was young. Since then, she fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. But she was not reckless. She was careful with her soldiers' lives, even if she did not care much about her own. Capital City, Daehyun said. The Draviks are burning civilian sectors. I need you to stop them and protect as many people as you can. Hana nodded once and left to brief her teams. Within minutes, the drop pods were launching. Hundreds of them, falling through the atmosphere like metal rain. The Dravik ships noticed them but did not react immediately. They thought the pods were debris or automated drones. They did not expect ground troops. By the time the Draviks realized their mistake, it was too late. Hana's pod hit the ground in the middle of a burning street. The impact was violent enough to crack her teeth together, but her armor absorbed most of it. The pod doors blew open with explosive charges. Smoke and fire surrounded her as she rushed out, her rifle already raised. Her squad came out behind her, spreading into formation automatically. They had trained for this 1,000 times. They moved like parts of a single machine, covering each other, watching every angle, ready for anything. The Draviks were 50 meters away, setting fire to apartment buildings. They were huge, each one over 8 feet tall. Their scales were dark green and tough as steel. They wore armor plating over their vital areas and carried plasma rifles that could burn through concrete. When they saw the humans, they laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. These were the weak mammals who thought they could fight. It would be over in seconds. Hana did not give them a chance to attack first. She aimed and fired. Her first shot hit a Dravix in the throat, right where the armor plates separated. The creature went down gurgling. Her second shot took another in the knee joint. It collapsed, roaring in pain. Her squad opened fire at the same moment. They did not aim for center mass like the Dravix expected. They aimed for weak points, joints, throats, eyes, places where armor did not protect. The Dravix's laughter turned to screams. The Dravix tried to return fire, but the humans were already moving. They used the burning buildings for cover. They threw smoke grenades that made it impossible to see. They split up and attacked from 3 directions at once. Every time the Dravix turned to face one threat, another hit them from behind. In 2 minutes, the Dravix squad was dead or running. Hana did not chase them. She had civilians to protect. She could hear them screaming inside the buildings. Sergeant Mireille, get those fires out, Hana ordered. Private Bora, set up a triage station. Everyone else, search the buildings. Find survivors. Mireille was 35 and had been a combat engineer for 12 years. She could build bridges or blow them up with equal skill. She pulled out foam canisters and started spraying the burning buildings. The foam smothered flames instantly. Bora, the young medic, unpacked her medical kit and prepared for wounded. The search teams found dozens of colonists hiding in basements and back rooms. They were terrified. Many were Thuvian with their 4 arms and insect eyes. Others were Koresh, gray-skinned and telepathic. A few were human colonists who had moved here years ago. They all looked at the armored soldiers with disbelief. You are human, one Thuvian said. You came to help us? Hana removed her helmet so they could see her face. We came to help, she confirmed. But we need you to move fast. Follow my soldiers. They will take you to a safe zone. Across the city, the same scene played out dozens of times. Human soldiers dropping into war zones, finding Dravix troops, fighting them with tactics the reptilian warriors had never seen before. The humans did not stand and trade shots. They moved constantly. They used the terrain. They attacked weak points and retreated before the enemy could react. And they did something else the Dravix did not expect. They saved civilians. They put themselves between the colonists and danger. They risked their lives for people who were not even human. In a fortified bunker beneath the colonial government building, Ambassador Velquin huddled with other civilian leaders. The walls shook from explosions above. Power flickered. Everyone expected to die at any moment. Then someone got the security feeds working. The screens showed streets throughout the city. And on every screen they saw the same thing. Human soldiers fighting. Human soldiers winning. Scholar Ji Hai stood next to Velquin, staring at the screens. Her telepathic senses could feel the emotions of the human soldiers even at this distance. She felt their fear. They were terrified. But they fought anyway. They pushed through their fear and did what needed to be done. "This changes everything," she whispered. The old records were not myths. They were warnings. We have been living next to the galaxy's most dangerous predators, and we did not even know it. Velquin could not speak. He watched a human soldier carry a wounded Thuvian child to safety while under fire. The soldier took 3 hits to her armor but did not drop the child. When she reached cover, she handed the child to a medic and immediately went back for more civilians. On the Indomitable, Dae-hyun received reports from all sectors. The initial drop had worked better than expected. His forces controlled key positions throughout the capital. Civilian casualties were still high, but the numbers had stopped climbing so fast. The Draviks were disorganized and confused, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Draviks had not committed their main forces yet. They were still trying to understand what was happening. When they finally realized humans were a real threat, they would hit back hard. Lieutenant Taewon looked up from his displays. "Sir, the Dravik's flagship is moving. General Krynoth is broadcasting on all frequencies. He is calling for all Dravik's forces to regroup and prepare for a major assault." Dae-hyun nodded. He had expected this. The Dravik's leader was angry. Angry that his easy conquest had turned into a real battle. Angry that primitive humans had hurt his forces. He would want revenge. He would want to crush the humans completely. "Good," Dae-hyun said quietly. "Let him come. The more forces he commits to the ground, the fewer he has in space. That is where we will hit him." Taewon looked nervous. "Sir, their fleet outnumbers us badly. If we engage them directly, we will lose." Dae-hyun smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had done impossible things before, and knew he could do them again. "We will not engage them directly. We will make them think we are weak. We will make them overconfident, and then we will show them what humans do to overconfident enemies." The battle for New Haven was just beginning, and the Draviks were about to learn a lesson that humans had taught each other over thousands of years of warfare. Physical strength did not win wars. Intelligence did. Adaptability did, and the will to never give up no matter how bad things got. The galaxy thought humans were myths. Now they would learn that some myths were real, and those myths had teeth. 3 days of fighting turned the capital city into a maze of rubble and smoke. The Draviks had sent wave after wave of troops. Each time, the humans pushed them back. Not easily, not without losses, but they held their ground. Private Bo-Ra worked in a field hospital set up in an old school building. She had not slept in 40 hours. Her hands shook from exhaustion but stayed steady when she worked on patients. Around her, wounded soldiers and civilians filled every available space. She was treating a Karish woman who had been hit by shrapnel when soldiers carried in a Thuvian child. The child was maybe 5 years old in human terms. 2 of his forearms were badly burned. He was unconscious and barely breathing. Bo-Ra immediately moved to help him. Another medic took over with the Karish woman. Bo-Ra worked quickly, cutting away burned clothing, applying gel that would protect the wounds, starting intravenous fluids. The child's vital signs were weak. He was going into shock. A Thuvian man rushed into the hospital. He pushed past everyone until he reached the child. His 4 arms were shaking. His compound eyes were wide with terror. This was his son. Bo-Ra looked up at him. "Your son is very hurt, but I can save him. I need you to stay calm and let me work." "Can you do that?" The Thuvian nodded, unable to speak. Bo-Ra returned to her work. She knew Thuvian physiology from her medical training, but treating a child was different than reading about it. She had to be careful. She had to be perfect. Hours passed. Bo-Ra operated on the child with help from another medic. They stabilized his breathing. They treated the burns. They gave him medicines to prevent infection. When they finally finished, the child was stable. He would survive. Bo-Ra stepped back, her surgical gown covered in blood. She was so tired she could barely stand. The Thuvian father stared at her, then suddenly bowed deeply. It was a gesture of profound respect in his culture. "You saved my son," he said. "You are not even Thuvian. You are human. Why would you risk so much for us?" Bora pulled off her surgical mask. Her face was young, but her eyes looked much older. "Because he needed help," she said simply. "That is enough reason." The Thuvian man was Ambassador Velkin. He had been searching for his nephew since the attack started. He had found the boy in a collapsed building and carried him through burning streets to reach the hospital. Now he stood in front of this young human woman who had saved his family, and he finally understood what humanity really was. Across the city, Captain Hanna led her squad through urban warfare that never seemed to end. The Draviks had learned to be more careful after the first day. They stopped charging directly at human positions. They used their own tactics. They set traps. They waited in ambush, but humans had fought urban battles for centuries. They knew every trick. When the Draviks set traps, humans avoided them or turned them against their makers. When the Draviks waited in ambush, humans detected them first and struck from unexpected angles. Hanna's squad cleared buildings one by one. It was slow, dangerous work. Every room could hide enemies. Every corner could be a kill zone. But they were methodical. They checked everything. They covered each other. They stayed alive through skill and constant vigilance. In one building, they found a group of Dravik soldiers holding 20 civilians as hostages. The Draviks demanded safe passage off the planet in exchange for releasing them. Hanna agreed to their terms. She told them to come out slowly with their hands visible. The moment the hostages were clear, her squad opened fire. The Draviks had not released their weapons. They had planned to kill the hostages anyway once they were safe. Hanna had read their body language and knew they were lying. She gave them the chance to surrender peacefully, but she was ready when they refused. This was the nature of human warfare. They would show mercy when possible, but when enemies threatened innocents, humans could be absolutely ruthless. They had learned long ago that sometimes violence was the only answer to violence. Lieutenant Taewon coordinated the larger battle from a command post near the center of the city. He was young and this was his first real war, but he learned fast. He studied how the Draviks fought and found their patterns. He predicted where they would attack next and positioned forces to stop them. The Draviks liked to attack at dawn. They thought the low sun would blind defenders. So Taewon positioned snipers on western buildings where they had clear shots with the sun at their backs. The next dawn attack failed before it started. The Draviks tried to use their superior numbers by attacking multiple locations simultaneously. Taewon created a mobile reserve force that could rush to any threatened position within minutes. The Draviks found themselves outnumbered at every point of attack, even though they had more total soldiers. Scholar Jihai watched all of this from the bunker. She recorded everything. She took notes constantly. She was witnessing something no Koresh had ever seen before. Humans at war. Real war, not the ceremonial conflicts that most species engaged in. She identified what made humans so effective. They could fight for days without rest, pushing through exhaustion that would kill most species. They adapted their tactics constantly, learning from every encounter. They fought as units with perfect coordination, each soldier trusting the others completely. And most importantly, they never gave up. When knocked down, they got back up. When wounded, they kept fighting. When situations seemed hopeless, they found ways to win anyway. But what disturbed Jihai most was their emotion. She could sense it with her weak telepathy. The human soldiers were terrified. They felt fear as strongly as any being she had ever encountered. But they fought anyway. They walked toward danger while every instinct screamed at them to run. This was courage in its purest form, and they felt grief. When their comrades died, the humans mourned deeply. But they did not let grief paralyze them. They used it. They fought harder to honor the fallen. They made sure those deaths meant something. On the fourth day, Sergeant Mirai led a demolition team to destroy a bridge the Draviks were using to move reinforcements. They planted charges carefully, timing everything perfectly. When the bridge exploded, it took out 50 Draviks troops in 3 armored vehicles. But while retreating, Mirai's team found a group of civilians trapped in a basement. The building was structurally unsound from all the fighting. It could collapse at any moment. Mirai made her team evacuate the civilians even though it meant being exposed to enemy fire for longer. 2 of her soldiers were hit during the evacuation. They survived thanks to their armor, but they would need medical treatment. Mireille stayed with them, defending their position until help arrived. She could have left them and saved herself. Instead, she risked her life for wounded comrades. This was what the galaxy had never understood about humans. They were not individually superior to other species. They were not stronger or faster or tougher, but they worked together in ways no other species could match. They sacrificed for each other. They protected the weak. They never left anyone behind. On the Indomitable, Colonel Dae-hyun received a transmission from the Dravik's flagship. General Krynoth wanted to negotiate. He offered to withdraw from New Haven in exchange for safe passage. He claimed he could not defeat the humans in ground combat. It was a lie. Dae-hyun knew it immediately. Krynoth was buying time. He was preparing something. The Dravik's general was too proud to admit defeat. He would rather destroy the entire colony than lose to humans. Lieutenant Taewon confirmed it. Sensors show the Dravik's fleet repositioning for orbital bombardment. They are going to level the cities from space. If they cannot take the colony, they will make sure no one can have it. Dae-hyun had expected this too. The Draviks were predictable in their cruelty. He had been preparing for this moment since the battle started. Now he would show them that humans did not just fight on the ground. They could fight in space too. And when humans fought in space, they brought the same ruthless efficiency they showed everywhere else. Prepare all ships for combat, Dae-hyun ordered. Launch all fighters, and get me a direct line to that Dravik's flagship. I want to talk to General Krynoth before we destroy him. The crew moved with quick precision. Every person knew their job. They had trained together for years. They trusted each other, and they trusted their commander. If Dae-hyun said they could win this fight, they believed him. Because humans had one more advantage that the galaxy did not understand. They had been fighting losing battles for thousands of years. They had faced impossible odds countless times, and they had learned that impossible just meant it would take longer. It did not mean they would give up. The myths were real, and the myths were coming for the Draviks. The Dravik's flagship hung in orbit like a massive predator. It was 3 times the size of any human ship. Its hull was covered in weapon ports. Shields glowed around it, powered by reactors that could fuel a small city. Around it, 20 escort vessels formed a protective screen. General Krynoth sat on his command throne and watched the pathetic human fleet. 5 frigates, 2 cruisers, 1 carrier. They were insects compared to his armada. He had been patient with the ground battle, but patience had limits. Now he would show these mammals what real power looked like. A communication request came from the human flagship. Krynoth almost ignored it, but curiosity made him accept. The human colonel appeared on his screen, small, soft, weak. How had such creatures caused him so much trouble? I am Colonel Dae-hyun of the Terran Defense Coalition, the human said. You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. Take your fleet and leave New Haven. Do this and we will let you go, Krynoth laughed. The sound echoed through both ships. You think you can threaten me? Look at my fleet. Look at your pathetic ships. I could destroy you all in minutes. Dae-hyun's expression did not change. Maybe you could, but it would cost you. And for what? This colony has nothing you need. You attacked it for pride. You stayed because you are too stubborn to admit you made a mistake. Now you plan to bomb it from orbit because you cannot defeat us on the ground. That is not strength, General. That is weakness. Krynoth's eyes burned with rage. How dare this tiny human speak to him this way? I will crush your ships. Then I will turn your cities to glass. Then I will hunt down every human in this system and make them beg for death. Dae-hyun nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. Thank you, General. I needed to be sure you would not surrender. Now I can do what needs to be done without guilt. He cut the transmission. Krynoth stared at the empty screen, confused. Then his tactical officer started shouting. The human ships were launching something. Hundreds of small objects. They were too small to be missiles, too numerous to be fighters. They were boarding pods. Krynoth could not believe it. The humans were boarding his ships? In space combat. It was insane. Boarding actions only worked when ships were already disabled. His fleet was at full strength. His shields were active. How could pods possibly penetrate them? He found out seconds later. The human frigates had been moving into position while he talked with their colonel. Now they fired everything they had at specific points on his escort ships, not trying to destroy the shields, just trying to overload them in small areas. The concentrated fire created brief gaps, milliseconds where shields flickered. The boarding pods hit those gaps with perfect timing. They punched through hulls with explosive charges and latched onto the ships like parasites. Then they disgorged their cargo, human soldiers in combat armor, armed with weapons designed for close-quarters fighting. Captain Hana led the assault on the flagship. Her pod breached the hull near engineering. The decompression alarms were already screaming as she and her squad rushed into the ship. Dravik's crew members rushed to stop them, but they were not prepared for this kind of fight. The corridors were too narrow for the large reptilian warriors to fight effectively. The humans were smaller and could move easier. They used the cramped spaces to their advantage. They threw grenades around corners. They set up ambushes at intersections. They moved through the ship like they owned it. Hana's squad reached an engineering control station. Sergeant Mireille pulled out a data spike and jammed it into the nearest terminal. Within seconds, she had access to the ship's systems. Not full access. The Draviks had good security, but enough access to cause problems. She started shutting down life support in specific sections. Not everywhere, just in areas where Dravik's troops were gathering to counterattack. They would have to choose between fighting the humans or finding air to breathe. She also locked bulkhead doors, cutting the ship into isolated sections. The Draviks could not reinforce each other now. On another deck, Lieutenant Taewon led his team toward the bridge. He had studied the ship's layout during the approach. He knew the fastest route and all the alternate paths. When the Draviks tried to block him, he simply took another corridor. When they sealed doors, his team cut through walls. The Draviks were strong and well-armed, but they were not prepared for this kind of warfare. They were used to ship-to-ship combat. Boarding actions were rare in galactic warfare because most species avoided the casualties they caused. But humans had been fighting inside buildings and ships for centuries. This was natural to them. Taewon reached a critical junction. He could hear Dravik soldiers on the other side of the bulkhead, dozens of them by the sound. They were waiting in ambush. He smiled and pulled out a plasma cutter. Instead of going through the bulkhead, he cut through the floor. His team dropped to the deck below, ran 50 meters, then cut through the ceiling and came up behind the ambush. The Draviks never knew what hit them. On the Indomitable, Colonel Dae-Hyun monitored all the boarding actions. 12 ships had been penetrated. The humans were spreading through them like a disease. Casualty reports came in steadily. 30% of the assault force was dead or wounded. That was heavy, but acceptable. And they were winning. The Dravik's fleet was in chaos. Ships that should be fighting the human vessels were instead trying to deal with enemies inside their own hulls. Crews that should be manning weapons were fighting in corridors. Command structures were breaking down as officers died. And then Taewon did something brilliant. He reached the navigation controls on one of the escort vessels and locked in a collision course with another Dravik ship. The crew tried to override it, but he had layered his hack with multiple false pathways. By the time they broke through his defenses, it was too late. The two ships collided in a massive explosion. Dae-Hyun immediately ordered other teams to try the same tactic. Within minutes, 3 more Dravik's ships were turned into weapons against their own fleet. The escort screen was collapsing. Captain Hana reached the flagship's bridge. The doors were sealed and heavily armored. She could hear General Krynoth inside shouting orders. She smiled and planted charges around the entire doorframe. When they blew, the door did not just open. It flew across the bridge like shrapnel. Hana rushed in with her squad behind her. The bridge was massive, designed for a crew of 50. 30 Dravik's warriors were there, all heavily armed, and in the center was General Krynoth himself. He was huge even for a Dravik's, nearly 9 feet tall. His scales were dark red instead of green. His armor was ceremonial and practical, covered in trophies from victories. He drew a plasma glaive and laughed. Finally, a worthy opponent. I will kill you myself, little human. I will mount your head on my wall. Colonel Dae-Hyun's voice came through Hana's helmet. Do not engage him alone. That is an order, Hana replied without taking her eyes off Krynoth. With respect, sir, he challenged me. I am going to answer. She holstered her rifle and drew a combat knife. It was small compared to the general's massive glaive, but humans did not win fights through size, Krynoth charged. He was fast for something so large. His glaive swung in an arc that would have cut Hana in half. She dropped and rolled under it. She came up behind him and slashed at his leg joint. Her knife found the gap in his armor. He roared and spun. She dodged again, and again. She was not trying to overpower him. She was making him tired, making him frustrated, making him sloppy. This was how humans fought. They used speed and intelligence instead of strength. Krynoth's swings got wilder. His breathing got heavier. He was wearing himself out while Hana stayed fresh. She had trained for this. She could fight for hours if needed. He could not. Then she saw her opening. He overextended on a swing. His chest armor gaped open for a fraction of a second. She threw her knife. It was not a clean throw. She was moving too fast. But it did not need to be clean. It just needed to distract him. His eyes followed the knife. Hana drew her sidearm and fired 3 times. All 3 shots hit him in the throat where his armor did not cover. He fell like a mountain collapsing. The Dravik's honor guard started to move. Hana's squad raised their weapons. But the guards stopped. Their general was dead. Their flagship was captured. Their fleet was destroyed. They had no reason to keep fighting. Hana activated the ship-wide communications. "This is Captain Hana of the Terran Defense Coalition. Your commander is dead. Your fleet is defeated. You have 1 chance to surrender. Take it or die. Choose now." One by one, the Dravik ships began to power down their weapons. The battle was over. The siege was broken. New Haven was saved. On the planet below, civilians emerged from shelters to see the Dravik's fleet retreating. Some ships limped away damaged. Others were captured by human boarding parties. The rest simply fled, unwilling to face the species they had thought were myths. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The sun rose over New Haven on the 6th day. Smoke still drifted from burned buildings. Craters marked where bombs had fallen. But the fires were out. The shooting had stopped. The city was quiet except for the sound of rebuilding beginning. Private Bora sat on the steps of the field hospital. She had finally stopped working long enough to rest. Around her, other medics did the same. They were exhausted beyond words. But they had saved so many lives. Hundreds of people who would have died without them. A small Thuvian child approached her. It was the one she had operated on 3 days ago. He was walking now, though 2 of his 4 arms were still bandaged. He carried something in his good hands. A small carved stone, smooth and round. The child held it out to her. Bora did not understand at first. Then Ambassador Velquin appeared, walking with his nephew. He explained that in Thuvian culture, giving a carved stone meant offering eternal gratitude. It was one of their most sacred traditions. Bora knelt down to accept the stone. She was young, only 23. This was her first deployment. She had seen things in the past week that would haunt her forever. But in this moment, holding this simple gift, she understood why she became a medic. This was why humans fought, not for glory, not for conquest, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Thank you," she said softly to the child. "I'm glad you are okay." The child smiled and hugged her. Velquin watched with eyes that held new understanding. He had misjudged humanity completely. They were not myths. They were not primitives. They were something the galaxy desperately needed. Protectors who would stand between innocence and danger, no matter the cost. Across the city, workers cleared rubble from streets. Human soldiers helped them, using their equipment to move heavy debris. Captain Hana supervised the work in one district. She was still in her armor, unwilling to rest while there was work to do. A group of Koresh civilians approached her nervously. They wanted to thank her. Their entire neighborhood had been saved when her squad stopped a Dravik's assault. One elderly Koresh spoke for the group. "We thought humans were weak," the elder said. "We laughed when we heard you were coming. We are ashamed of our mockery. You saved us when no one else would." Hana removed her helmet. Her face was tired and covered in dirt and soot. "We did not come here for thanks," she replied. "We came because it was right. Because you needed help and we could provide it. That is enough." The Koresh elder bowed deeply. "Still, you have our gratitude and our respect. We will tell our children about this day, about the humans who walked into fire to save strangers." In orbit, Colonel Dae Hyun stood on the bridge of the captured Dravik's flagship. His engineers were studying its systems. His soldiers guarded the remaining Dravik's crew members who had surrendered. The ship would be returned to the Concordat as proof of what happened here. Lieutenant Taewan approached with casualty reports. "Sir, final numbers are in. We lost 320 soldiers, another 500 wounded. Civilian casualties are estimated at 12,000 dead and 30,000 injured. Infrastructure damage is extensive. Dae-hyun closed his eyes for a moment. Every number was a person. Every casualty was someone who would never go home. The victory was real, but so was the cost. This was the truth of war that civilians never understood. Even when you won, you lost. But without us, he said quietly. All 30,000 colonists would be dead. The entire colony would be ruins. We saved tens of thousands of lives. That has to mean something. Taewon nodded. It does, sir. Every person we saved will remember. Their children will remember. Humanity will be remembered not as conquerors, but as guardians. Scholar Ji-hai spent the days after the battle compiling her report. She had recorded everything. Hours of video, thousands of notes, testimony from survivors of every species. She now had the most complete study of human warfare ever created. But her report was not academic anymore. It was a warning. She wrote about human endurance, their ability to fight for days without rest. She wrote about their adaptability, learning and changing tactics mid-battle. She wrote about their pack tactics and how they sacrificed for each other. She wrote about their capacity for both violence and mercy. Most importantly, she wrote about what made humans truly dangerous. It was not their weapons or their ships, it was their refusal to give up. When other species would surrender, humans kept fighting. When situations seemed hopeless, they found ways to win. They had been forged in the fires of Earth's violent history. They were survivors at the deepest level. She concluded her report with a recommendation. Humanity should be granted full membership in the Galactic Concordat immediately. More than that, humans should be invited to help train other species in defense, because the galaxy needed to learn from them, not just their tactics but their mindset, their determination, their courage. Ambassador Velquin returned to the Concordat Council with Ji-hai's report. The great chamber was full again, but this time there was no laughter. The council had seen the footage from New Haven. They had read the casualty reports. They understood now what they had missed. Velquin presented the report with quiet dignity. His nephew sat beside him, still recovering from his injuries. The child was living proof of human compassion. A Thuvian saved by a human medic who risked everything to help a stranger. The ancient records were right, Velquin said. Humans are Death World survivors, but we misunderstood what that meant. We thought it made them weak. Instead, it made them strong in ways we cannot match. They endure what would kill us. They adapt to anything. They protect the innocent even at great cost to themselves. The galaxy needs humans, not as curiosities, not as observers. As full partners, the council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership with all rights and privileges. They were also offered positions in the Concordat Defense Initiative. The galaxy wanted to learn from them, wanted their help protecting the weak, wanted their partnership. But more than official recognition, humanity had gained something more valuable: respect. The galaxy now understood what humans were. Not myths, not legends, but real people who would fight for what was right no matter the odds. 2 weeks after the battle, a memorial service was held on New Haven. Thousands attended. Humans and aliens stood together to honor the fallen. Row after row of markers stretched across a field. Human soldiers who died protecting strangers. Colonists who were lost despite everyone's efforts. Dravik soldiers who had no choice but to follow orders. Colonel Dae-hyun stood at the memorial and spoke to the crowd. He talked about sacrifice, about courage, about the cost of freedom. His words were simple but powerful. He did not glorify war. He acknowledged its horror. But he also reminded everyone why some things were worth fighting for. After the ceremony, Velquin's nephew approached Dae-hyun. The child looked up at the tall human with curious eyes. "Are humans really as scary as everyone says?" the child asked innocently. Dae-hyun knelt down to look at the child directly. His face, lined with scars and years of war, softened into a gentle smile. "Only to those who would hurt the innocent," he replied. "For everyone else, we are friends. We are protectors. We are the ones who will walk into fire so others do not have to." The child thought about this and nodded. "Then I am glad you are here." "So am I," Dae-hyun said. As the sun set on New Haven, the city began to heal. Buildings would be rebuilt. Wounds would scar over. Life would continue. But everything was different now. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were not myths. They were not forgotten legends or exaggerated stories. They were real. They were dangerous when they needed to be. They were compassionate when they could be. And they were exactly what the galaxy needed. The ancient records had tried to warn everyone. Humans came from a world where everything tried to kill them, where survival meant being tougher, smarter, and more determined than anything else. They had fought their way to the stars through countless wars and disasters. They had learned to never give up, to never abandon those in need, to walk into fire when others fled, and when the galaxy needed heroes, when New Haven burned and hope seemed lost, Terran troops walked into those flames. They did not do it for glory. They did not do it for conquest. They did it because someone had to, because it was right, because that was what humans did. The myths were real. The legends were true. And the galaxy would never forget the day humanity showed them what Deathworld survivors could do when given a reason to fight. They walked into the flames, and they brought everyone else out safely.